Hi, everyone. My name is Danae Wells, and my proposal is on prison programming and recidivism rates. And I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you all. Okay. So my project is on prison programming and recidivism. So prison programming can affect the rate of released offenders when it comes to recidivism. Recidivism rate is the likelihood to reoffend once they are released from prison. So programming inside the correctional facilities can help to deter the likelihood of that happening, because it can not only give them skills and education, but it can also help them get off substance abuse, have counseling, and help them find different opportunities that they didn't know were available in their community. So understanding the psychology behind what motivates criminal behavior and finding the criminogenic need, so what's causing the crime, can help to identify what programs are going to be most helpful for offenders. Also, knowing the program's effective rates is important, because areas like education have been proven to be super helpful for those who have offended when they are released, because it'll help them get a job, help them with money management, helps them find housing, because they know how to do these things now, or use a computer. That's part of education. It can also help them to learn how to live with a mental illness. It can help them with substance use disorder. It can help them find their basic needs, such as home, clothing, food, and learning where to get those things. So for my project, my research question is, does prison programming and community-based aftercare programs reduce recidivism rates? So the null hypothesis says that prison programming has no effect on recidivism rates, and the alternative hypothesis says that prison programming decreases the amount of recidivism. So when we look at the literature, there are many types of programs, and a few of these are going to be discussed right through here. And I'll go a little bit more in depth than what my slide says. So with religious programming, services can help with criminal behavior both inside and outside of the correctional facility. Those who are part of religious programming tend to have better behavior while they're inside, and it helps them to deter from crime outside, as they also have a base of support within that religious community. Johns states that we need to discuss and use positive reinforcement. And you positively reinforce behavior, you're more likely to get that same behavior over and over. When you negatively reinforce behavior, you're more likely to get that again. However, when we use positive reinforcement, we can see change. When we use negative reinforcement, it's the same pattern. And what we want is for them to change that pattern. So using that positive reinforcement can help retrain the brain and help them to have better actions, behaviors, and a different thought process behind meeting the need that that crime is serving. We talk about the lack of government programs upon release to the community, and that can add to their likelihood of recidivism. So not being able to get housing, help with food, help with clothing, not being able to find those needs to be met, it makes it much more difficult for somebody coming out of prison to not turn back to crime. So when we are releasing people, we need to be able to give them the community-based options that they can use to be able to thrive instead of trying to find some criminal way to survive upon release. Alienation between reality and prison can lead to a lack of hope and can lead to a higher rate of recidivism. When we are talking about a prisoner, they're behind bars, they don't have the same kind of routine that somebody outside would. They may not know technology like they would have if they were outside. There's a lot of differences. So they are not in these real life situations. So bringing some kind of reality, bringing some kind of role play, bringing some kind of practice, some job training, even if it's making license plates or sewing or something along those lines, having those types of programming does help them understand basic work skills that can be used on the outside. So when there are different types of programs that have to do with outside living and having some type of reality-based practice, that does help inmates when they are released be able to function outside of the facility. When inmates are treated throughout the correctional system and throughout the process poorly, they are less likely to participate in programming. When they are treated well, they're more likely to participate in programming. The way that officers and prison personnel react to the different programming will help to determine whether an inmate is more likely to participate or not. So the more positive praise they get, the more positive that the program is looked upon, and the more it's shared, the more the information gets out, the more likely an inmate is to participate in those programs. So the National Institute of Justice helps to monitor the rates of recidivism, and it can show us where the biggest increases and decrease rates are. So when we look at it, within 5 years, about 76% of people will have reoffended. Within the first year, about 46% of people will have reoffended. And that's a large number because almost half of the people who have just been released within a year will go back because they're not getting those needs met. And so they're turning back to crime, or they are still stuck in that criminal mindset. Unfortunately, we cannot fix everybody, but we can help to decrease the amount of recidivism rates by using these programs. It also tracks the programs that help reduce recidivism rates the most. The Hamilton Project also helps to depict these rates. First Step Alliance looks into programming and how it affects release and reintegration. They specifically look into financial programming the most. They offer financial programming for prisoners who have been released or are getting ready to be released, so they have a financial base to step out of prison with and to help them keep financially secure the best they can. That way they don't have to meet their basic needs through crime. The World Population Review looks at incarceration rates for the world and the major reasons for recidivism. It also shows how much higher the US is compared to other countries in the world. We have a very high recidivism rate. We have a very high prison rate compared to other countries. So the literature states that recidivism rates are as high as 77% among the US population. So 77% of people who are released from prison are likely to reoffend again. Within 1 year, about 43% will recidivate. The use of prison programming helps to increase the likelihood of gaining employment, but also reduces the likelihood of recidivism rate by 43%. So if 43% are recidivating within that first year, if we look at whatever number that comes out to be, almost half who are in prison programming just for education are less likely to offend. When an inmate is tied to religious programming and is released, their likelihood of recidivism drops from 50% to 13%. That's a huge jump from 50 to 30. 15 to 13%. Just because they have religious programming, they have a religious community to go into. and they have a new value set and system, a new way of thinking. So these programs really do have the power to decrease the amount of recidivism among offenders. And we need to figure out which ones are the best for offenders and which ones really need to be shared more and can be really used and looked upon. So for my experiment, I used about 100,000 incarcerated prisoners, all within my general area, some that are further away. The prisoners have sentences that would allow them to be released within the next 2 years. That way they have time to go through programming, but also we can follow them outside of programming. They will not be required to attend programming. That way we can get an idea of those who do attend programming and those who do not and their recidivism rates. They will be offered the programs, and they will be provided with surveys through phone calls, through emails, paper and pencil surveys, whichever way is best to contact that inmate. And they will come from areas such as West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Delaware, and Arizona. The study will begin by getting permission from the facility to conduct this experiment. They'll then send a list of potential inmates. Those will be selected and mail will be sent to them. Upon their response that they are willing to participate, they will be sent the informed consent. Upon release from the prison, they will be continued to be followed through mail, through telephone, through email, however is best way to meet with the participant. And after 5-year release mark, the researcher will debrief the participant, thank them for participating, and have the signed consent form to close the case. So the hypothetical data and findings that I would have is the prison programming and recidivism project is going to use a t-test. The test will use a degree of freedom at 99 and the alpha level of 0.5. The critical value is 1.66. So according to the data, we'll reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative. The null was that there was no change. The alternative is that it will decrease recidivism rates. So from what we are seeing within the data, we will find that prison programming can reduce the likelihood of recidivating. So future research should be conducted in this field because prisoners need to be able to be released feeling confident they can live in the real world and to become part of society again and not feel like they need to turn to crime. So how can we do that? Well, we can continue our research. We can continue looking into things that solve these problems to help renew the minds and the thought processes and be able to give them the best help that we can so they can succeed. So to do that, we would need to have programs in real life situations. They would need to have education, vocational, work-related training. They would need to be able to learn how to do an interview, a resume, find open job positions, how to find a substance use disorder classes and groups outside of prison, how to read a bus route, how to be able to get there, numbers to call for mental health, how to use a telephone, how to use a computer, because some people who have been incarcerated for a long period of time would not know how to do that upon release. So some of these programs are a staple in understanding the world as it has changed while the person was incarcerated. Further research should look at how recidivism can help in real life scenarios with these programs. So how can we incorporate what could happen in real life inside a prison situation? So how can we teach them to go shopping and to budget while they're still in a prison facility? So my conclusion, The prison programming and recidivism research experience may aid in the reduction in recidivism in the US. In America, the recidivism rate is high and needs to be lowered, so we need to find a way to reduce this problem. The research conducted on a program and what is useful to learn and what is a hindrance to successful reintegration must be found out in effort to best assist the inmate upon release and to help decrease their likelihood of committing criminal behavior. The study can lead to continuing programming outside of prison for the newly released inmate and show what barriers are not being met through current programming. New programming can be invented, and programming that does not prove useful can be removed. The study can bring forth the knowledge to know how to help an inmate become a law-abiding citizen. So here are my references. We have the First Step Alliance, Gall and Assad, Gall again, Hall, Wooten, and Lundgren, the Hamilton Project, Johns, Lucidi, Bocata, and Facio, National Institute of Justice, and the World Population Review. So thank you for your time and for listening to my presentation.